Now we're only going to dip our toe into auditing and event logging because we have a whole module discussing logging. So we'll dig into it there. But what you can do is if logging is turned on, if auditing is turned on in that particular machine, you can get a lot of rich data. If this is an end user's workstation that's part of a domain, you'll probably have this data delivered or the settings delivered from some sort of policy file. If you're in an enterprise, one of the things that you need to do if you're investigating a particular workstation in that enterprise is go back to the domain administrator and ask them what their policy files are and to give you outputs of that data, because then that'll tell you what to look for in the particular workstation. If this is an individual non-domain, let's say it's in somebody's house, these registry settings and that policy setting aren't going to be there in most cases. End users don't want those activities tracked and they don't care about them. They know what they're doing on their workstation, so they kind of dismiss this. Some of the activity of installing will be recorded. Some of the system information will be recorded in these event logs. Not everything. But again, this will establish a pattern of activity on the particular machine. So the event log helps you with your timeline. Where you look at this is in the event viewer. Now, one sidebar here from a testing standpoint, they expect you to know the old versions of the event viewer ID numbers, the event ID numbers, and the new versions for all of these system type events, all of these account management details. But all this is going into the logging section, so we'll come back to it. I want to leave you with one little thing before we move on, and that is a great website called eventid.net, which helps translate a lot of these event IDs into meaningful information that a system administrator can act upon because the system is failing, flawed, or causing problems. They can go back and investigate using eventid.net. Let's talk a little bit about operating system data. So we're kind of drifting away quickly from the registry viewer into information that we can have elsewhere on the file system. So let's first talk about the shortcut files and then the recycle bin. For shortcut files, there are actually these .lnk files that are created when a user accesses something. So if a user accesses something and the link is created and they use that link over and over and over again, that shows an intent and purpose toward a particular file. The file may be deleted, but the link may not be deleted. And we can actually look at that link and say, okay, they've had this link, and it'll give you the modified access and change. Well, it won't be changed. It'll be the modified or accessed, created or modified times on that particular .lnk file. So this could give us information about files or shares that the user has actually accessed. It tells us about local files as well as remote files. FTK and Ncase have a really good tool for looking at these links, and they expose a lot of this information to give us leads in our investigation to dig deeper into a particular area. Remember, the links show intent. The implication here is that the user did this on purpose, and typically because they use the file often. Now, opposing counsel will argue, well, there could have been a script that went in and clicked on this file over and over and over again. Yes, that's true, but if there's hundreds of instances of this, it's highly unlikely. Let's talk a little recycle bin here. So the recycle bin is the trash can. It is the place where when we're finished with files as an end user, we say, we'll drag that over there, we'll get rid of that, and that will free up space on our machine. Today, with terabyte and 2 terabyte and 3 terabyte drives that are on end users' workstations, it's highly unlikely they're going to delete anything, unless it's for a really good reason. Maybe they want to hide from us. So they'll drag it to the recycle bin, and then they'll empty the recycle bin because they don't want us to look inside of there. Now, the beautiful thing about the recycle bin is the recycle bins are user-specific, and they're also they're user-specific, and they're also on the root of individual files and roots of each drive. So if you've got a C drive and a D drive and an F drive, and they're actually all local physical hard drives, there's going to be a recycle bin for each one of those particular disk partitions. Switching gears here, let's talk about web artifacts. We will definitely come back to the recycle bin. For web artifact analysis, what you want to be looking at is the normal browsers that everybody uses, the Firefox, the Chrome, the Internet Explorer, the Safari. You want to investigate, when you're looking at those particular browsers, you want to look at the bookmarks, the cookies, the history, the downloads, and the search queries. How you do this is Autopsy and the Sleuth Kit. It has an excellent way to expose all these web artifacts. This shows you a pattern of activity over a long period of time. Yes, there are registry keys for this information. Yes, there is an index.dat for this information. But you want to use a tool that says, here's their web surfing pattern of activity. Now, if you were to do this to my machine, what you would realize is that I use 3 different browsers. I use Safari, I use Windows Internet Explorer, and I use Firefox. I use them for testing websites, testing my own websites, but also because some websites only run on IE, and so I have to visit them with that tool. So don't just say, oh, I found their default browser and this is the one that they always use, because a user could be using other versions of the browser or other browsers on that machine for a special purpose. Let's talk about that index.dat. So the Internet Explorer web browser uses this index.dat as a database that is an activity log of all the logged on users in Windows. It tells you about the visited URL, search queries, recently owned, autocomplete information. Autopsy takes a lot of the information from the index.dat and populates it for you in a nice, easy to view. But you could dig down into the index.dat yourself. Now, here's the thing about index.dat. It's not just one for all web browsing. It's one for the history, for the cache, and the cookies. And then there's also one for the Windows search index. If you sit down at your computer as the evil adversary and you go, I'm trying to find that, what was that fraud file called? You know, it's got all that information about all my customers in it. I know it starts with something. Okay, let me go into the search. So I'll go in and I'll search for it. You know, I haven't used it in like 2 or 3 months, but I need to. I want to go ahead and search for it. The Windows Search Index tool has indexed all of these files and populated them in the search. And when you, as an end user, search there, that shows intent over a period of time. So that the opposing counsel can't say, oh, well, that was malware on the computer and that doesn't count for what we're doing here. No, it's not malware, because you have to do the search, and the activity of searching populates the index.dat. Let's next talk about end-user files. We're going to talk about PDF documents, Word documents, and graphics files. We're just going to touch on graphics for just a minute, but that's what's coming up next.